Hello, this is Epicurus A. Greece, and I'm joined with Simon, Ender, and Will, and we're here to do a critique of Bionic Dance's critique of Plantinga's modal ontological argument as presented by Inspiring Philosophy. Not all of us were too happy with her critiques, and we're here to give a pretty good
response. That's an understatement.
That's a very, very big understatement. Considering I was so harsh on Mr. Epsilon, I think I'll just be a little easier here.
This one is arguably more torturous and excruciating than anything Repsion has made. I've seen Repsion's video on the ontological argument, and this one is actually worse.
Oh, it's horrible. I could actually finish watching Repsion's video. I could not finish watching this one.
Well, me and Mr. Repton actually share one criticism of the ontological argument. But Mr. Repton was covering the San Anselm's ontological argument, while Bionic Danks is covering the Modal ontological argument. So we can expect it to be a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Exactly. For those of you who are tuning in, we'll give some reference to the modal ontological argument, especially where Bionic Dance misses the whole point of it. And without further ado, we're going to play this excruciatingly painful video. So Simon, take her away.
Okay.
Alvin Plantinga's modal ontological argument is probably the best argument for the existence of God. It uses the laws of modal logic and acts similar to a mathematical proof.
You know, you can't just logic God into existence. You're going to need some evidence. But as long as you're making this argument, let's do this.
All right, stop it.
Plus, yeah, the modal ontological argument does not logic God into existence. It takes the nature of what it means to be God and then pushes the argument that said definition, even our knowledge of that definition, entails that a being has to exist because of it, using modal logic or modal logic to prove the point. Now,
yeah.
Just so we can be... Now, the first thing you should always know about any argument is you should be as charitable as possible towards it, and obviously she does not. It is not logicking God into existence.
I mean,
Okay.
She says that way too many times in the video, when at most she should only say around 3, and that's the part that really bothered me.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, in the video, she basically repeats over and over and over again, you must present evidence, you must present evidence. She's a hardcore evidentialist, obviously, but...
Well, no, where I thought she was going with that, with the proposed evidentialism thing, I thought she was trying to do the analytic and synthetic distinction right here in the video, but after getting further into it where she denies logic and stuff, I think what she's actually saying is that you can't prove things without using science.
Yeah.
Or if you can't personally see it, then it doesn't exist.
At one point, she says that you can't prove things that are external to the mind with logic, doesn't she?
Yeah, well, that would just be like a statement of the analytic-synthetic distinction, which I was being charitable by thinking that's what she was saying, because that is extremely controversial, but it's much less controversial than just flat out denying logic and philosophy and saying that, pretty much taking a position of scientism, which is what I think she's actually doing.
Mm.
And position she has had some notoriety in defending in the past. I don't want to go into a whole spiel of Bionic Dance fails in other places because we can do it all day, but there are tons of interesting stories and hangouts where you can catch her doing it, so anyone listening, be my guest.
Shall I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Greetings, fellow space travelers. Bionic Dance here. Meet YouTuber Inspiring Philosophy. I totally meant to respond to this video like 2 years ago and just somehow never got around to it. So here we go, the ontological argument for God's existence.
To start, here's how the modal ontological argument works. Premise 1, it is possible that God exists. Premise 2, if it is possible that God exists, then God exists in some possible worlds. Premise 3, if God exists in some possible worlds, then God exists in all possible worlds. Premise 4, if God exists in all possible worlds, then God exists in the actual world. And premise 5, if God exists in the actual world, then God exists.
Sure does seem to me like there's some weapons-grade logical leaps in there. But what the hell? Let's give him a chance to explain.
Okay, stop it.
First,
Yeah. See, I don't. I really hate it when people who don't know anything about modal logic do these videos on the ontological argument. See, I don't understand modal logic, which is why I haven't done this yet. But yeah, what she's talking about here is axiom S5, and she declares it as a logical leap surely without even knowing what it means.
I'm no expert in modal logic, but I mean, I think I could probably do a better critique of of IP's video than she did. Like, she doesn't really. It's not that she doesn't understand modal logic. It's that she doesn't understand philosophy in general, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just from what I basically know about modal logic, and it's very small, is that it's logic made especially to deal with notions of possibility and necessity, and contingency, things of this nature. So what can possibly be the case, or something that's self-consistent or consistent with another set of possibilities or states of affairs, and what has to be.
Okay, yeah.
Anything. So that's
the idea here. The idea here from premise, I think we're on from premise 2 to 3, is, if God exists in some possible world, he exists in all possible worlds, and that's because God is defined as being necessary. So possible necessity is necessity. If a necessary being is in one possible world, it exists in all possible worlds. That's what's being said here, and that goes completely over her head because she doesn't know what she's talking about.
I mean, I think IP pretty much explained that relatively thoroughly in his video, so I'm not sure if she was going through it piece by piece.
As we'll see, she completely rejects that whole part of Inspiring Philosophy's video because during that part, Inspiring Philosophy has to define his terms, which she thinks is a fallacy.
Oh yeah, I do remember that part.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, right now, in the following clip, if I'm not mistaken, she laments that Inspiring Philosophy is being a little too obvious with his definitions. Let's see.
Yeah.
They mean a hypothetical situation. It is generally a way for philosophers to test an idea, to see if it's logical, by asking, could it exist in a possible world like ours?
Raise your hand if you had already figured that part out.
There you go.
However, the one thing people seem to misunderstand the most in the argument is how God is defined. Some atheists say we're just imagining God into existence.
Well, aren't you? I mean, if you're going to prove that something external to the mind exists, you're going to have to present hard data. You're going to need more than just a logical argument. And then the dude
here we go again with that.
Compare God to
all right, pause it.
Which
she continues to demand evidence, which, as I said before, sounds like she's trying to make the analytic-synthetic distinction. But see, the thing is, I would like for when people do this, where they say like you have to have evidence, I'd like them to explain why you have to have evidence for something.
Yeah,
Because
I mean you can't just presuppose.
Yeah, if they did that, that would make it a good objection. But they don't do that, and yeah, there's.
You can't just presuppose empiricism.
Yeah, like it looks like that's what she's doing, but like I don't know because of how stupid she is. I can't follow her thought process. I can never do that with stupid people.
I think she's from the Dawkins school of thought. She presents evidence, but does not understand why it is required.
Also, she never gives a definition of what she means by evidence. One could say because this logical syllogism entails God existing, then that is evidence enough. Because of how great Modal S5 is, we should trust its conclusions because we trust in other places. One could argue along those lines that suffices as evidence on its own.
Yeah, I find that really annoying when people like say, you must give us evidence in order to prove X, Y, and Z, but when I ask, what do you mean by evidence, they just say, any good evidence.
Wait, why is Johan and Rats here?
Yeah, I don't know how he got the... Hey, Johan, how do you get the link here?
Andrew gave it to me. Or posted it.
You sound like you're outside.
Yeah, you
there's
sound
a
like
fan.
you're in a tornado or something.
Hold on, let me turn the fan off. It's really hot here all the time, so...
That's how where I am too.
It's
Yeah,
90 degrees where I am, but I prefer it that way.
Gotcha. Where are you right now?
I'm in my house right now.
Gotcha.
Alright, so just... Okay, because I don't really want this hangout to be stuffed with a lot of people, no more sending out the links to, for everyone here.
Okay, that's fine.
Alright, cool.
Alright, well, I posted it to my wall where everyone can see it, but if anyone else joins, we'll just kill them.
Gotcha.
There we go. Problem solved. Is there anything else we need to say about this little section?
No, I've actually sustained quite a deal of brain damage. I can't even remember what the fuck we were talking about, so let's go.
Frankly, he misunderstands.
Okay, here's the problem. They are falling into the typical error of misunderstanding how God is defined. And because of their ignorance, they are concluding that the argument doesn't work. So we need to look at how God is actually defined and how it differs from how you would define a unicorn.
But here's the problem with that. You're essentially guilty of begging the question.
What
You're
the...
essentially
Oh gosh.
Jesus Christ, this is stupid as hell. Okay,
Whoa,
so
wait.
the whole idea here is that inspiring philosophy is not allowed to define what he's talking about even prior to making the argument. If he defines what he means by God, he's assuming God exists somehow, which is ridiculous, and he's committing a fallacy of begging the question.
But I mean, begging the question is when you make an argument where, like, your conclusion is essentially no different from your premises. It's just worded
the
differently.
thing is, there's no way. What inspiring philosophy is doing here, defining what he means by God, he has to do that. You can't make an argument for something without telling
Defining
people what the
terms.
fuck you mean by God. So yeah, and the thing is, she's gonna say, I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead to what she's gonna argue. She's gonna say that he's assuming his definition is correct or the only definition of God, which he's not. He's not even doing that though. He's just saying this is what I mean when I use the word God. This is for the purposes of this argument. This is what I mean when I say God. And
I mean, at first I thought that what she might have meant was he's committing the fallacy of special pleading, but I'm not even sure if that's what she meant now, or...
No, that's not what she meant. She seriously just meant that in order to make an argument, you can't be allowed to define the words you're using. Like the thing that you're arguing for. Imagine if I were to do this. If I were to construct an argument for the conclusion that a crane exists, right? A crane. And then I said, by a crane, I'm not talking about the machine that's used for lifting things. I'm talking about a bird. She would say, "Oh, well, you're begging the question. You've defined what you mean by crane. What the fuck is wrong with you? How can you be that stupid?"
That was like a heartbreaking video because I didn't think that. I mean, I know plenty of bad arguments on YouTube, but I didn't even understand like what fallacy she was trying to point out at first.
Your definition of God is the correct one, regardless of the actual nature of such a being, assuming one exists.
Now, there are three ways to define a being.
Yeah, stop her. She said, you're assuming that's the correct definition, and then she said, assuming a God exists. No, we're not assuming a God exists. The argument is for that conclusion. You fucking idiot. I can't bear any more of this. This is so goddamn stupid.
If I could also throw something in there, inspiring philosophy has like two, three other parts in this series where he does tackle similar objections. He tackles the question-being circularity thing in another one. I'm not sure why she didn't mention that much. She didn't, unless did she go on to tackle any of the other parts, or did she just?
No. I don't know if she even saw the other parts. See, the thing is, I actually do think the modal ontological argument begs the question, but I don't think the reason why is because he's defined what he means by God. That's ridiculous. And we should probably leave like a link to better videos on this, like Carneades' series on the modal ontological argument, where he actually raises objections that make sense?
Agreed. I'll
That'd be
definitely
nice.
do that once this is posted.
Yeah.
An entity can either be impossible, which means it exists in no possible worlds. An example would be a square circle. An entity can be contingent, which means it exists in some possible worlds, like a unicorn. A unicorn could exist in some possible worlds, but not in others. Last, an entity can be necessary, which means it has to exist in all possible worlds. Now, what do we mean when we say something necessarily has to exist in all possible worlds? Well, examples of necessary entities are numbers, absolute truths, and shape definitions.
That's Platonism. I
Well,
disagree with all of
absolutely.
those.
Like a magical being that spun the universe out of nothingness, assigned morality, and which cannot be physically demonstrated the way, say, numbers or shape
Okay, all right,
definitions.
stop it. She says God cannot be physically demonstrated the way numbers and those other abstract objects can.
I think she means that it cannot be demonstrated by science.
Okay,
I
but
think-
where she goes
Math
horribly
can't be
wrong with that.
Yes, that's the weird part. You can demonstrate a number by science.
You cannot prove that numbers cannot be physically demonstrated. Like, what the fuck is she even talking about? When's the last time that you saw a number?
I remember my algebra teacher told me when we were talking about imaginary numbers, I was like, how do imaginary numbers even exist? And he says, well, numbers in general don't exist. When was the last time
Yeah.
you saw twos growing on trees?
It's like, yeah, it's like I can imagine, like, she wakes up, gets out of bed, and trips over the number 3. Like, that's fucking retarded. That's not how it works. You
Well, she might.
You cannot physically demonstrate the existence of abstract objects.
Not only that, but I feel like IP was just trying to define a couple examples of necessary entities, things that have to exist. He wasn't saying that. He wasn't trying to compare God to a shape definition.
Yeah, he wasn't making. Yeah, he was just talking about the only way that those are analogous is that they're all necessary. The thing where I disagree with IP there is that I don't think any of the things that he named actually exist.
Well, this makes Bionic density Platonist, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there are forms of. There are philosophers who take the Platonic.
No, I think it's called immanent realism, where she says that abstract objects are physically existing things, and that is by far the most.
Right, she said that you cannot prove them physically. You can prove them physically, yes.
But I'm not even sure if she in fact, I'm certain that she doesn't take that position knowingly. It's just that's.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Like, she doesn't
just
understand what
something.
she's saying, so.
Okay.
They say numbers or shape definitions can. In fact, all of these other things are much, much simpler than such a being. Frankly,
Okay, yeah, that's not what he was saying, though. He wasn't saying that God is the same in terms of complexity. He was saying that God is the same in that God is also necessary. So, yeah, that was just an example to show what a necessary thing would be like, not to say that God is the same complexity-wise.
Well, I think that
we got
she's saying that...
Galatra in here. We need somebody to boot him out.
Sorry?
Galatra just joined, and we're not letting any more people in, so we need someone to annihilate him now.
I don't know how to do it.
I do.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so I'll be ejecting people. So, cool. Anyway, let's continue.
Numbers or shape definition sounds an awful lot like a category error.
So when we talk of God in this argument, we are saying that if he exists, he would have to be a necessary entity, because God is defined as a maximally great being. And a maximally great being is defined as a being that possesses all qualities that are better to have, which we define as great-making properties.
But see, once again, this is begging the question.
How
Because
the fuck is that begging the question?
I mean, has she ever done like any sort of scientific, like any sort of paper revolving an argument? The first thing that you always do is you must define your terms. That's not begging the question.
Her problem
that's
is that
common
she's
sense.
incapable of breathing and thinking at the same time, which is why her thought process is so fucked up.
Yeah, that's...
Well, for the record, I do think that greatness, at least and in the modal ontological argument is ill-defined, but I don't think that's what she was going for.
No,
She doesn't even make that argument.
Not at all.
No, right now she should say that greatness is subjective, let's see.
It's a maximally great being. And assuming God exists...
It's not assuming God exists. Why does she keep saying that?
The definition could be wrong. Furthermore, trying to claim that God has all the traits that are better to have, well, better is subjective. Better is a point of view. It's not objective.
Okay, again, this is like her objection where she said that all claims require evidence or whatever, or all claims of existence require evidence. This is an objection that would work, you know, to say that great-making properties are subjective, but I wish she would make an argument for why she thinks that.
Or at the very least, request an argument from IP.
Yeah, or that would be fine too. Either one of those.
Say that, like, that there's no reason to think that greater making properties are objective, or even better, do both. Present an argument for why they are subjective, and ask for an argument for why they aren't.
Okay.
Okay, have we gotten to the part yet where she said that...
Sorry?
Have we gotten to the part where she says that the definition of God as a maximally great being could be wrong? Because I find that to just be hilarious.
Yes, the definition you chose could be wrong. Then we're not talking about the alternative definition.
Yeah, I don't know what she's saying there.
People say he should have all traits, including the evil ones. And once
there you go. No, you can. That's absurd. You cannot be evil and contemporarily maximally evil and contemporarily maximally good. This is ridiculous. You should have all the traits. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's an obvious problem.
And just assuming that maximal greatness means all the properties that are beneficial to have, one would think that good would be the one that would be covered under maximal greatness and not evil.
So anyway, where she says that the definition could be wrong and God could be something else, well, inspiring philosophy would just say, oh, that's not what I'm talking about, though. That's not God, then. If it's different from my definition, then I just wouldn't even refer to that thing as God. So what the fuck is your problem?
Actually, if that's not the definition they're talking about, then she has no reason to discuss the argument in the first place. They're just not talking about the same thing.
Also, to please her, inspiring philosophy said, oh, that definition is what you refer to as God. Well, consider my argument, me talking about Schmod. Schmod totally exists. He's a maximally great being. You know, you could go in that route, too.
Like, I think this is a mistake that IP was trying to point out with the atheist experience. It's not... We aren't, like, assuming that our version of God is the true version and then trying to figure out a way to fix it in. You could think of any argument for God's existence as just coming up with a rational deduction for what a higher power or a God would have to be if he were to exist.
Again, that's assuming God even exists.
Other examples are love.
Wait, did she say that again? Did she say
yes,
assuming God exists? How the fuck?
Look, if we keep harping on that, we'll never get through this video.
Yeah, seriously.
Yes, well, that's what IP is moving forward, isn't it? An argument for the existence of God. If she were to require, I don't know, that God already exists before the argument is being made, then there will be no necessity for the argument in the first place.
See, the strategy behind this is just like the strategy behind just about every argument. He says, here's what I'm talking about, and then here's why I think it exists. He gives the argument. He doesn't just say, all right, God exists.
God exists isn't even in one of the premises. Well, I guess it kind of is in the last one.
So yeah,
that's the conclusion.
Her objection is that even mentioning God, you've already assumed that he exists. No, that's fucking ridiculous.
Not to have these properties to their maximal extent. You would also possess no qualities that are bad to have, such as imperfection or corruption.
Well, like I said, this sounds an awful lot like wishful thinking.
Oh,
But most of all, you have to possess the grade-making property of necessity.
Can we stop right there? I just want to get on her remark about wishful thinking. That has nothing to do with this argument. Whether or not one wishes this to be true or not, it's completely irrelevant. And even if it was wishful thinking, that just is the genetic fallacy right there.
Well, I think that what she wanted to say is that imperfection and what was that she said. Well, basically that inspiring philosophy has no reason to think that these properties are lesser-making properties, but she presented the point very, very impolitely and very poorly.
But this would just cover under her earlier objection with all these values are subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Is a property that would be better to have.
Would it? Suppose some possible world really, really sucks and this God wants no part of it. Then it wouldn't be such a great-making property, would it?
I think that here she's misunderstanding what greatness means, or at least she's assuming a different meaning than the one that inspiring philosophy is using. She's assuming that better or greater means more convenient to have.
Yeah, and that's really just not what it means.
I mean, she says if a particular possible world sucked, then God would not want to be in it. But I don't think it's a matter of what you wish to be in. It's a matter of what is, I think, more magnificent or more great-making.
I mean, I normally define what a greater-making property is by sort of using like a positive-negative distinction. If it's a greater-making property, then it adds on something to the character. Where if it's a lesser-making property, it sort of takes away. Whether or not that's a good argument for it, I don't know, but that's the one I've been using.
I think that Bionic Dance is using a utilitarian version, a definition of what a greatness or better is. But I think she's misunderstanding what inspiring philosophy means. Well, that's I think in part inspiring philosophy's fault, because I think that greatness is ill-defined to begin with, but she assumed a particular meaning, which I don't think is inspiring philosophy's one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Same.
Shall I continue?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Please do.
God being necessary is consistent with Scripture.
Or, to put it another way, it's consistent with religious fan fiction that has no actual objective evidence to back up the magical bits.
That's
Nice
our
proof by
top
assertion.
atheism soundbite for the day.
Yeah, nice proof by assertion.
Yeah, well, that was pretty cheap, I think. It doesn't even deserve comment.
She left out the other things, like that it's a sky daddy and he was made up by desert goat herders in Iron Age times.
Because
Bronze or stone. Or Bronze or Stone Age times. It changes every single with every single atheist, really.
Yeah, it's just the ultimate argument, really, to just say that.
Oh wait, she left out the flying spaghetti monster too.
Yeah, that part. And the invisible pink unicorn.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Not this argument. By going through the premise with a unicorn in place of God, they are trying to define God in the same way you would define a contingent being. Whereas when we use God in the ontological argument, we are saying God is more than just contingent. He is maximally great. And anything maximally great must be a necessary entity.
And once again, you're guilty of begging the question, but more than that,
Oh my
there's-
fucking god.
You have to be kidding me.
No, I mean, well, you know, I forgot to mention this, but I was actually in an argument with Bionic Dance yesterday over the definition of atheism, and she was defining atheism the way the Wikipedia page defined it.
As lack of belief?
Yeah, and I was citing things like Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and
That's
she was
what
just like, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter. You're still wrong." And I was thinking, like, how can you just say that your definition is just automatically just trumps mine somehow? It's ridiculous because she was making the mistake that she actually accuses Inspiring Philosophy of making, of just saying, you know, my definition is the correct one. She actually does that.
I remember Philosophy Lines made a video on like the different types of like the definition of atheism.
So yeah, I mean, I think the definition is that gods do not exist, but you know, I was just telling her, you know, that's my definition and where I got the definition from, and somehow she thinks she can say that I'm just objectively wrong because her definition is different from mine. So she really does make that mistake that you'd think no one would ever make.
I mean, like, why does she think that the Wikipedia page is more credible than Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy?
I tried to tell her that the way I define it is the way that it's traditionally defined. It's the way that philosophers and philosophy websites, any philosophical source would define it, you know. And she rejected all of that for basically no reason, just because she likes her definition more. So yeah, we did actually get in an argument about a definition where she made this idiotic mistake.
She made the thing that she's accusing IP of doing.
Of just saying, I know my definition is the right one. It was really impossible to argue with her.
I really hope that she watches this video, and this is wishful thinking, but I hope that she will actually see the error of her ways, but I know that that's not. I mean,
I'm not saying there can't be different definitions of a word. That makes perfect sense. That's what she's saying, though. She's saying that whatever definition she comes up with is the only one that can ever be used for word, and everyone else is objectively wrong.
Yeah.
See, I'm actually okay with her defining the word however the fuck she wants. I think that's weird, and I think it's annoying, though, because that's not how people... That's not how the word is. That's not the accepted usage of the word. That's one that she just made up, and I'm frustrated by that. But I'm not. I mean, she's allowed to do that though if she wants to.
I mean, if people want to use Oxford over Stanford, then that's perfectly fine. But you can't just you can't bring that your own personal definition into like a philosophical debate and then just say, my definition has to be right because a handful of YouTube atheists are using it, even though all philosophers are using it.
You don't argue based on definition. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm not even trying to say that her definition is just wrong. I mean, I'm sure there's a decent number of people who use that definition, and I'm okay with that. I'm just trying to say that there is another definition out there, and you can't just reject it because you don't like it.
Or critique me whenever I use it that way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. She just says that I'm just automatically wrong for using it, when it's a perfectly legitimate use of the word and arguably more legitimate than her use.
Particularly, it's I think it's despicable because she doesn't. It's not like she's trying to counter the argument. It's like she's trying to cut off the opposition from making the argument in the first place.
Yes, that's exactly what she's doing.
You must use, I don't know, non-theist or atheist or anti-atheist, but it's like fighting over something that is really trivial.
Yeah, I think I've come to the position to, as of this point, to just say, you know what, I'll just let people define themselves however they want.
Yeah, I'd pretty much do that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't really intensely, you know, engaged in an argument at all, but she immediately got insanely angry for some reason and just cut off the conversation and said that she wasn't going to say anything to me again. It was hilarious. The way that she just got outraged almost instantaneously.
It's because she's heard this so many times and has been refuted on this point as well. She was in a hangout where atheists were in this group. They were telling her that her definition was just ridiculous, two of which were linguists. And she was like, don't care, you're all wrong. Even later, I brought up the fact that her definition was ridiculous because I think she's kind of moved away from it, at least I hope so.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, her definition can be ridiculous, and can be the one, not the traditional one. You know, it's a newer definition that people have come up with. And I'll still let her use it, though. What I don't get is where she comes around and says that I'm not even allowed to use my definition, and by calling atheists what I call them, I'm using the word incorrectly. Like, that she makes the objective way that the words are supposed to be used.
Yeah, but she takes it one step. She took it one step farther at one point and said rocks and trees were atheists too, which even people who use the lack of belief one say, oh, it's only true of humans and sentient beings who could.
Well, see, it is consistent with her definition of what an atheist is to say that a rock is an atheist.
Yeah.
I guess my cats and dogs are all atheists as well.
By her definition, yeah.
Yeah. I think we should probably move on because we could stay on this point like until 9 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
By Eastern Standard Time, of course. All right.
Well, I just brought that up because of how hypocritical she is.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Simon, could you please continue with the video?
Unmute first.
We just left off. She was saying something about begging the question again, which is hilarious.
Simon.
No, it's okay. Me. I rewinded the video a bit because I let it go a little before while you were still talking.
I see.
She did not repeat it again.
Has nothing to do with the essential nature of God or the unicorn. What it has to do with is the fact that people have claimed a magical being exists for which we have no evidence.
Stop. Okay. Of course it's about that, because we're talking about contingency here.
She does know that this has nothing to do with the amount of evidence we have for something, but the definition of something.
Questions of existence, of non-external existence, the question is a scientific one, not a philosophical one. And yet you're trying to use philosophy, you're trying to use pure reason to show that something outside the mind exists.
Okay, here we go with this again. All right, whenever you're trying to prove that something exists without evidence, there are only two things I can think of that's been done for, where you use an a priori, reasoning to show that something exists. There's God, and then there's abstract objects. And her objection is you're not allowed to do that. Okay, she should kind of show why. I mean, that seems plausible to me that you can't show that something exists a priori. I mean, I don't have an immediate intuition against that. But she just keeps presupposing that that's true, and I'm kind of annoyed by that.
Yeah.
Convincing? Well, not really. But when it boils down, it's not a matter of how you feel. What matters is what is logically coherent.
Exactly my point.
The only way of this argument is to show that it is impossible for a maximally great being to exist.
Except that it's not the job of the skeptic to disprove anything. A skeptic is not necessarily a naysayer. They're just someone who questions the validity of another person's beliefs, the logic upon which they rest. You are the one putting forward the argument. It's up to you to prove it and to patch any logical holes someone might point out. You have not presented any evidence for the existence of your God. You've just presented a philosophical argument that doesn't hold water when compared to the real world.
Oh, wait. Pause it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't a lot of people consider philosophical arguments to be a type of evidence?
Well, a lot of philosophical arguments have premises that rely on evidential support. This is a unique argument in that it's just pure philosophy. There's no, it's completely a priori, this argument.
Yeah.
And that could be a problem with it, and I can see where she's going with this. But see, the thing is that I immediately think that she's raising a much stupider objection, which is just that you're not allowed to use philosophy. The way I think she's seeing it is that she's taking a position of complete scientism, where the argument, all the premises could actually be true, and yet the conclusion, even though it's a valid argument, the conclusion still doesn't follow because there's not any evidence out there. I think that's the sort of objection she's making, where she's just denying logic. And I assume she's saying that because I know that she's an idiot.
But the interesting thing is that a lot of the time that's how mathematics works, through deductive arguments. So Unless you would want to deny mathematics at.
Okay, no, that's different though. That's different. Mathematics though never proves the existence of something. That the objection she's making.
Oh yeah.
There's something external out there in the world. You're trying to make a statement about the way the world is, the ontology of the world, and you're using a priori reasoning to do that. And she's making the objection that that's just never possible. It's the analytic synthetic distinction. And see, that's a controversial view, but I'm kind of okay with that. I'm just telling you that I'm interpreting what she's saying as you're not even allowed to use philosophy and logic doesn't work. And as I've said, the reason why I'm interpreting her that way is because she's just a complete retard and she deserves that.
So you aren't giving her the benefit of the doubt this time.
I'm being very uncharitable, but I mean later in the video she pretty much proves that she's a complete moron. If she hasn't already, she really solidifies that fact later in the video.
Well, if anything, she has shown that she simply just doesn't understand what IP is arguing.
Also, in all fairness, if she's not going to be charitable to someone else, I don't really think she has too much room to complain when people are being uncharitable to her.
Yeah.
Tried is with the Omnipotence Paradox. It is most commonly presented like this. Can God create a stone so heavy that even he can't move? If God cannot create the stone...
Take him out.
Hang on.
Oh, it's Yoda Chewbacca. I actually like this guy.
No, I like him too, but I mean...
It's too full. Sort of.
Well, Johann and Ratz hasn't actually contributed to this.
Yeah, Johann and Ratz is dead already, so...
Yeah. Congratulations, Yoda. You're in.
Johanna, do you mind? Yeah. Never mind.
What the fuck, man? Fuck you, Ander.
I'll suspend you from Facebook again.
Not if I fucking you to it.
Okay, shall I go?
Please do.
Then he is still not all-powerful. Therefore, the idea of God is impossible. However, this attempt is debunking the question of absurdity. Asking can an omnipotent being create a stone so heavy even he can move implies that omnipotence is defined as able to do the logically impossible.
No, you're right. There is a logical absurdity here. That's precisely what the paradox is pointing out. You don't get to change the definition of omnipotent just because you want it to apply to your God.
Okay, that's the problem there. He's not changing the definition. Like
that's what the definition already is.
The ability to do all things would not include logically impossible things because that's not even
those
coherent.
Things don't exist.
There's not a real. You're not asking him to do something if it's not even a meaningful statement.
I like IP's example of like, can God toad an 11? It's just gibberish.
That's not even a question to ask a thing to do.
Not to mention the fact when he says this is logically absurd, he's not pointing that God is logically absurd. What he's pointing out is that the objection is logically absurd, but which he's not exactly getting.
I think that Bionic Dance just missed a great opportunity because, well, the realistic nihilist here and me actually agree that it should be the fact that God can't create a stone that even he can't lift is a show of his non-omnipotence. But
yeah, because it is actually logically possible to create something you can't lift. That's a more interesting objection, and again, the reason why she raised her other objection is because she's stupid.
Like, she didn't even spot... I mean, I'm not going to try and bring whether or not this is a valid objection into this, because that could take a while. But she really did miss an opportunity to make a much better argument against this reply to the objection.
Well, she's not going to miss the next one. Now, I will continue.
Infinitely powerful. And if that does not include the ability to perform logical absurdities, then that's not omnipotence.
Well, see, the theist can just say that's not what I mean when I say God's omnipotent. I don't see where the problem is. The theist gets to define the term, doesn't he? Oh, that's right, he doesn't, because that'd be begging the question.
Right, but she makes it seem as if absolute omnipotence, like the position of absolute omnipotence, could be an okay position. Like that's.
Yeah. Well, again, she does actually argue that there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. In this video, she says, well, you know, what's wrong with logic being? What's wrong with logical absurdity? She'll say that soon enough.
But the fact is that yeah, sorry.
See, the problem with
on her shirt.
I'll let you go.
You'll notice on her shirt, it says something. It like has something like the power of logic compels you or something like that. Yet she denies logic later in the video, and nothing she says is logical.
I didn't even notice that, but she thinks that logic just is some vague term for smartness. That's what she thinks logic means. Which still it doesn't apply to her, but.
But I think that well, later in the video she actually does raise the point that she actually does raise the point that when inspiring philosophy says that in a God that is omnibenevolent cannot be that God cannot lie, and she says that he should be able to. And that one, at least to her credit, she's able to be pinned down.
I might not even critique that part because that's possibly the smartest thing she says in this video.
That's exactly. I agree with that one.
It's a relatively valid objection. It's arguable.
It's really a soft ball for her to rebut it, but
it's a defensible position.
Yes, I
says isn't.
I have a moment. My video crashed down.
Oh, that sucks.
I need to reload it.
Oh, well. Anyone got any plans for this weekend? Just to be more.
Well, I am like completely dead from running this morning.
Alright, and cool. We're back to the video.
Oh.
Okay, I'm back in business.
Powerful, infinitely powerful. And if that does not include the ability to perform logical absurdities, then that's not omnipotence. And isn't that what magic...
that's not a real ability, though.
I think we just replied to that part, actually.
Yeah. She's kind of repetitive with her bad objections.
It's even worse hearing it the second time.
But I don't think she's actually... inspiring philosophy makes an argument for why logical impossibilities cannot be used to disprove God. Because it says, for example, even if logic were to be dismissed, then also existence would make sense. She's not even trying to tackle his argument.
Well, it's like the realistic nihilist said. She's acting as if the idea of absolute omnipotence, where God does these absurd things, is like a viable position.
I remember Derez did a. I thought it was a pretty good reply to the stone God lifting thing, but
Derez, no, that was the worst. That was the worst reply possible.
The thing about it is that like it questions like whether or not she's trying to object to something because she wants to point out that there's a logical absurdity, but if the theist affirms that God can do a logical absurdity, what the fuck would she have to say to that, right? Like, it really, it's not doing anything for her case to say that, oh, well, omnipotence should be absolute omnipotence, right? It's not.
Well, I mean, she did deny it. She did, like, act as though the logically impossible is possible.
Well, see, once you've done that, though, it's not an objection anymore. Because the theist would just affirm that, and you'd be stuck there. You'd have to just agree, okay, it's illogical, but it's all right.
I can do that shit.
Talking about sorcery, alchemy, witchcraft, or divine magic, and let's face it, that's what miracles really are, godly magic. We are talking about something that breaks the laws of the universe, something that takes nature...
No, this is fucked up.
What?
This is wrong. She's confusing physical impossibility with logical impossibility here. Something that goes against physical law is not the same as something that breaks a law of logic. And this is really where I get the idea that she has no fucking idea what logic means.
I don't think she even knows the distinction between metaphysical possibility and physical possibility. She just conflates a logical possibility, a metaphysical possibility, and physical possibility in one homogeneous mixture that says nothing.
See, like she's talking about miracles here, and there's nothing like a priori impossible about, say, walking on water. Like that's not a logical impossibility.
Physically impossible, but it's not metaphysically impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the irony is that she was just talking about how like God should be able to perform the logically impossible. Then she's critiquing the idea of God being able to perform miracles, which she believes are logically impossible.
No, I don't think she's saying that. I think she's saying that there's a difference between miracles and I think she's saying there's something different between miracles and breaking the laws of the universe. I think that's what she wants to say.
She's saying that miracles are breaking the laws of the universe.
Yeah.
Do you want me to rewind the video?
Yeah, play that part like a few seconds back.
Like at 8:10 or something.
Yeah, just from right there.
Miracles really are godly magic. We are talking about something that breaks the laws of the universe, something that takes nature and says, this is going to happen, whether it should or not. When God turned laws...
What?
That doesn't even make sense.
This is going to happen whether it should or not. What the fuck is she talking about?
I think she's been taking video lessons from Mr. Epsilon.
Oh no, even Mr. Epsilon isn't that bad.
Well,
maybe.
Mr. Epsilon in the Kalam video was...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He said a full sentence we could not make sense. He said a huge sentence fragment we could not make sense of at all. We tried...
People have offered me their interpretations of it, which are, of course, not actually what he said. But, like, I try to fit them in there and assume that maybe he meant that, but, you know, who knows? There's no telling what the fuck he said in that clip.
Life into a pillar of salt. Well, the human body has roughly 40 teaspoons of salt in it. That's not so much a pillar as it is a small...
Okay, this is just irrelevant. We're not talking about miracles. We're not talking about a physical possibility. We're just talking about... we're talking about the Modal ontological argument. She should just stick to that topic.
We're also not even talking about the God of the Bible. The Modal ontological argument proves only like a deistic kind of prime mover God.
God, yes.
Well, she does think... She says in her Kalam video, which we might get to on another day, she says in her Kalam video that the Kalam is used to argue for the Christian God. And so she thinks these philosophical arguments are for a specific God, which of course they're not, and no one uses them for that purpose.
Wait, she does know that the Kalam was invented by Muslims, right?
No, she doesn't know that.
No, she doesn't. She's an idiot.
But I mean, like with the pillar of salt thing, it sounds like what she's equating can't happen naturally with can't happen logically.
Yeah, that's the mistake that she's making here.
Yeah.
So how did God make a pillar of salt out of a human being? That sounds to me like something that breaks reality, doesn't it? And don't even get me started on making it rain for 40 days and 40 nights, or raising Jesus from
the same mistake repeated multiple times.
I'm skipping ahead. It's irrelevant. Let's just...
go ahead and skip that part. You can skip to... okay, I don't have any timestamps nearby, but that's good. Yeah.
Bible has verses that state it's impossible for God to do certain things. Asking the question is like asking, can an omnipotent being create a square with 3 sides?
I'm sorry, are you actually trying to say that being able to lie is a logical absurdity? That God being unable to lie is just like being unable to create a square with 3 sides? Who's putting forward the logical absurdities now?
I don't know who the hell that guy is that just joined, but let's go ahead and eliminate him.
Okay.
Oh, wait. I'll take this one. So, I think what IP is trying to do is that he's saying that there are some things which are part of God's nature which don't allow him to do some things, demonstrating that like the Christian God is perfectly consistent with the idea that idea of a God cannot do all things.
There is a problem with the way IP and Derez talk about this, in that they use a vacuous definition that just says God is able to do whatever God is able to do. Because anything God can't do, they will say, oh, that goes against his nature. But you could just use that to say that anything in the world is omnipotent, because a person can't do certain things. Well, the reason why they can't do it is because it's not in their nature to do that thing. So he is making a mistake here, and it's one that's been noticed by other philosophers and other Christians also, and they've tried to address this, and it's actually considered a real problem. But
I mean,
Bionic Dance is going to completely overlook that.
I mean, I think that the type of omnipotence that they subscribe to is the idea that God is omnipotent because he has all the power in the universe, but he can't. But that doesn't mean that he can do things that go against his nature.
Okay, yes, that's not. The statement of their definition is able to do all that is logically possible given your nature. That's the definition they use. I would be okay with a vague thing that just says like most powerful thing in reality or in the universe or something. That's okay. I'm completely okay with that.
That's sort of the definition I subscribe to.
Right, but the reason the theist wouldn't want to commit to that is because that assumes that there could be something with more power eventually.
That you could conceive of something more powerful.
Right. That's why they want to say.
It's not the hard definition that I subscribe to, but I think like that's sort of like the general idea that I think of when I think of omnipotence. Has all, or I guess all possible power would be a much better definition.
Or you couldn't. I'm not going to get into this because I really want to focus on the Bionic Dance video, but
yeah,
I just take up something like divine simplicity and argue that God's power comes from simplicity, and because he is the most simple, he's also the most powerful.
Doesn't William Lane Craig reject that?
He does reject divine simplicity, as do a lot of other theologians, but Thomas. We do accept divine simplicity.
Well, so you've conceded that it's incorrect.
Divine simplicity?
Yeah.
Oh, because William Lane Craig reject. Oh, yeah, that's true. Right.
But I mean, personally, I think Aquinas is a much better philosopher than William Lane Craig, and that's
I have no understanding of how you came to that conclusion.
Because I like him more.
Well, let's not get sidetracked. We are.
Let's stop this discussion. We need to get back to Bionic.
Yeah, we got a really good part coming up here.
Asking, well, why can't God do the logically impossible? He is all-powerful, so he should be able to do anything. Well, you need to understand that logic derives from order. Without order, nothing makes sense, including existence.
Oh, this is so stupid.
Logical absurdities to disprove the existence of God.
Where is it written that everything has to make sense, that everything has to be logical? I mean,
It's on your fucking shirt, lady.
That's the best part of this video. I kind of want to reread like what her about section is.
Hey Simon, scroll down to the comments on this video.
The comments are different for everybody because it kind of goes to who's on your list. There's you.
All right, yeah, that's
good. Sorry, what should I look for?
Well, I left a comment there very recently.
Wait a minute.
I don't know why I can't see it.
Okay, her about section is ripping faith and illogic, a new one.
Like I said, she thinks that logic is some term that means is synonymous with smart. So she's ripping not being smart a new one.
But then she shouldn't be able to say like, why does everything have to be logical? Like it still doesn't really like make sense or really justify it.
It's the stupidest objection you can ever make to an argument. It's just deny how people even come to conclusions. It's really bad.
It's what Stephen Lowe says. It's going nuclear, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what it is.
By the way, I made a mistake before. I said that she hadn't engaged with this part of the video, but she has. So yes, I said something wrong before. Just for the sake of clarity. I'm going to continue, okay?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Does it have to be so? Furthermore, nobody is using logical absurdities to disprove the existence of God. At most, they're being used to show that the ontological argument doesn't work. There are other ways you could use to prove that a God exists that are a lot more convincing than this steaming pant load. What it comes down to is this. There are three possibilities. First, God does not exist, in which case this entire argument just falls apart. Second, God does exist.
Now, hold on. This does not make any sense. I mean, she's requiring that God exists in order for the argument to be moved in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, well, what she's going to do here is she's going to say that there are two types of God, which is retarded. This whole thing is just a retarded trichotomy that she's built. She's going to say that there's a possibility that God exists but isn't God, and then there's the possibility that God exists but is God. And of course that's fucking retarded. That doesn't even make sense.
That's a nice contradiction in terms.
But, I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, she's saying that if God does not exist, then this argument does not work. Well, I mean, the argument does not have to work in order for God to not exist. I mean, she's taking this backwards, I think. Should I continue?
Yeah, that is a good way to describe everything that she's thought of so far.
First, God does not exist, in which case this entire argument just falls apart. Second, God does exist, and as you've described him, which means he's not all-powerful and thus not a necessary being, nor is he as he's described.
No, where the fuck did she come to that conclusion? Like, being able to do immoral things or logically impossible things has nothing at all to do with having the property of necessity. So he's defining God as being necessary but not able to do immoral things and logically impossible things. That makes perfect sense. You can do that. Those things are not related at all. In order to be a necessary being, you do not have to be able to do impossible things.
I mean, even using the I think faulty example of numbers, numbers are causally inert. So, but she sure as hell is not going to ask that the numbers can do anything, even the logical.
I was arguing with Durez83 yesterday, and he was trying to say something similar, that in order to be a maximally great thing, in order to be necessary, you have to be a maximally great thing. And of course that's completely false, because like Inspiring Philosophy was saying, some of the things that you would call necessary, like numbers, have none of those properties. So it's very absurd. And so like I said about her trichotomy that she's presenting here, it's one, God doesn't exist, two, God exists and he's God, and then three, God exists but he's not God. It's very fucking stupid.
Let's see that part.
Or third, God does exist, and as described in the Bible, which means that your definition of omnipotent is wrong. And this
okay, no, that's another mistake there, where she says that the God, Inspiring Philosophy's God, is not the God of the Bible. The thing is, the God of the Bible is defined as one that can't do immoral things. So she completely
but the funny thing is that Inspiring Philosophy used the Bible to say, you see, my definition is consistent with the Bible.
I mean, I think that was even played in her video. So
yes, it was. It was.
It definitely was.
The Omnipotence Paradox. If it's either of those last two, you're guilty of moving the goalpost and begging the question.
God,
no matter
fucking
gosh.
Goalpost for what?
How many times is it now?
I think
5.
that's the 6th. I think it's the 6th, 5th or 6th.
If we had
used words, you begged the question.
suggested by Simon, we would have all been drunk.
I would all be dead by now, but
I mean, my parents would kill me if they heard I was drinking. But the thing is that I think it's weird how first off, I think that she needs to define what she means by logic, because I don't think that what she thinks it is true. But then I guess she would be a big hypocrite, because that would mean that she's begging the question.
Exactly. Well, it may not even be defining words. I think it might be like speaking, or being alive. Those kind of things are begging the question.
You never know.
Ontological argument simply does not hold up against even the slightest scrutiny. If you look at it, I hope you start to see the ontological argument the way I do, like religion's cheap.
Oh my fucking god, no.
Not in a million years.
Fellow space travelers, this is Bionic Dance, saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think.
Fuck. That was a train wreck.
Maybe she should take her own advice. Oh, you bet. I'll comment and I'll rate, but they won't be the comments and ratings you want.
Okay, anything to say about that before we end this?
I want the last hour of my life back.
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah, actually it was.
I feel like this
Depends
moron
on
should take a philosophy class. I feel like that would benefit her kind of stupidity, because I don't feel like she'd be threatened, right? I think she doesn't want to accept anything that seems threatening to her worldview, but if she just thought, oh, I want to get good at philosophy and took a philosophy course.
I mean, think about it. She's been active for how much? 7 years? 6 years? She hasn't paid any. She hasn't learned anything in all this time. I don't think she's going to start now.
Yeah, what's really sad is if she did take a philosophy course, would you not feel very sorry for that professor?
Yeah. I mean, with her fucking... Every time the professor tries to say anything, she just starts ranting about begging the question.
It would be even worse.
Asking for evidence.
Bad, we've
Every
only been in
single
my
thing he
class
says.
for 1 day and you already get an F.
I think it would be even worse than like the God's Not Dead movie, because didn't the I didn't watch it, but I think like the guy who was trying to do stuff was disprove his philosophy teacher was granted permission or told to do it by the teacher, whereas I feel like she would just yell out in the middle of class, "No, you have to start presenting evidence," and a bunch of other stuff.
It wouldn't be like that. I think
You know the truth.
I think most philosophy professors are atheists, so like they would agree on that one issue. But see, the difference is that the philosophy professor wouldn't be a fucking dumbass, and that would make her extremely angry. And he might also use a different definition of atheist than she does, which would cause her to just sporadically make these awful squeaky sounds with her terrible voice, and would probably just kill everyone in the classroom.
She would say he's begging the question.
Yeah, she'd just make those high-pitched screech sounds and rant the entire time. It would be horrible to be in a class with her.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it for the video.
Thank God.
I think I'm just going to stop the broadcast right now because it'll be us harping on her even more. And, well, that is fun. It would kind of get cumbersome after a bit. In any case, hope everyone's enjoyed it, and see y'all later.